Halo, everybody, halo. Halo is a shampoo that glorifies your hair. So halo, everybody, halo.
Use Halo shampoo if you want naturally bright and beautiful hair. Remember, even finer soaps and soap shampoos hide the natural luster of your hair with dulling soap film. But Halo contains no soaps. The first time you use Halo, your hair glistens in all its natural beauty. The natural color and luster shines like sunshine through a clear window pane. And remember, even in the hardest water, Halo makes oceans of rich, fragrant lather. Halo quickly carries away loose dandruff and oils. Use Halo on your children's hair too. Say hello to Halo and goodbye to dulling soap film. Get Halo shampoo at any cosmetic counter. Remember, Halo glorifies your hair.
So halo, everybody, halo. Halo shampoo, halo. Oh, I love to be an Oscar Mayer wiener. Everyone truly love to be. 'Cause if I were an Oscar Mayer wiener, everyone would be in love with me.
Oscar Mayer wieners are all meat, all good meat, rich in complete meat protein, mildly seasoned to bring out all the good meat flavor. Buy a package or two of Oscar Mayer wieners today.
Oh, I love to be an Oscar Mayer wiener. That is what I truly love to be. 'Cause if I were an Oscar Mayer wiener, everyone would be in love with me.
And remember, kids, buy washing machine for the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile coming to your neighborhood this summer.
City of Lost Angels, 1953, Friday, 11:41 a.m. The morning smog filters like diffused saffron past the Venetian blinds of my West Hollywood efficiency. I peruse the obits and sip my warmed-over bourbon and Sanka, then bite into my day-old with little sprinkles and pretty pink icing on top. Some folks do crosswords. I do obits. Maurice Masseuse, silent French clown who captured the hearts of millions with his mute alter ego, Pepe Le Poupe, passed away quietly in his sleep, according to sources close to Masseuse.
At least we think he passed away quietly in his sleep.
Spoke Lyndon LaRoche, Masseuse's grief-stricken manager.
With Masseuse, it was hard to tell. As far as we know, he spoke no final words. A true mime to the end.
I continued reading. Masseuse was laid to rest yesterday in the Garden of Eternal Silence at Forest Lawn, Glendale. Also, according to LaRoche,
Masseuse left no last will and testament, and under California law, the bulk of his estimated $5 million estate is now subject to probate.
no last will and testament, huh? And so another Hollywood legend bites the big one. No reason to get weepy. We are talking mimes, annoying little men with white paint on their faces and little black teardrops. At 93, Masseuse was no Mickey Rooney. Personally, I had no deep, dark feelings one way or the other about Masseuse. No, that isn't true. I have a lot of deep, dark feelings when it comes to guys like Masseuse. And if you search your own deep, dark feelings, so do you. Admit it. We all hate mimes. Annoying. And for my money, Maurice Masseuse was now doing his big sleep deep inside his little black box over at Forest Lawn. He was the most annoying mime of all. My name's Thorne. Jake Thorne. Thornes go back 3 generations in this business. And my business is private investigations. Dicks to civilians like you. when I receive a phone call from Masseuse's grief-stricken manager, Bert LaRoche, implying that Masseuse's death by natural causes wasn't quite so natural, I take a more empathetic interest in the dead little froggy skits. 5 million clams buys a swimming pool of chowder in this chicken feed town.
Why don't you drop by my office today and we'll talk about it, Seamus?
I'll be over as fast as Guy Foley's footsteps get me there. LaRoche was your typical Hollywood pond scum.
Good morning, Thorne.
He lied. Well, what makes you so sure Masseuse was iced? I asked the Frenchie's manager seating across the oversized desk of his lavish office. Did I say desk? This spread looked more like a skating rink with a couple of Ma Bells stranded on top.
$5 million for starters, Seamus, the net worth of Masseuse's estate.
LaRoche shouts across several square yards of lacquered mahogany, and I think about asking LaRoche if a megaphone comes with the digs. I had no idea Masseuse was so well heeled, I said, tugging at my earlobe. Big-breasted redheads and Hollywood sleazebags always make me a little pensive. And for the record, LaRoche was no Rita Hayworth. And under that cheesy Rodeo Drive rug, he's as polished as Yul Brynner.
Masseuse was riding the comeback trail, Seamus. Also, my father made a couple wise investments for the little guy early in his career.
LaRoche toys with the manicured corners of his Aeroflin cookie duster. Well, I figure the mustache is a dingus, the same as his toupee. And that's when I smell a skunk and ask LaRoche to crank up the ceiling fan. And then I told him, your father made a lot of wise investments for his clients over the years.
Well, that's right, Seamus. Jimmy Durante, Liberace, Lassie. We've made and managed the careers of a lot of famous mugs over the years.
And now you feel like you owe the little guy something. I indicate the cushy surroundings and all the photographs of the famous and the near famous on the walls. And I wait for LaRoche to come up with a non-incriminating answer. I count the sweat beads on his forehead. 13. I figure if I play the big fish right, 13 might prove to be my lucky number. And then LaRoche offers me some stale peanuts from a gold leaf tray. I know all about the shady dealings of the LaRoche agency to the stars, I say. My grandfather kept Rin Tin Tin's paw out of the tabloids after that sleazy Santa Barbara pet motel scandal back in '43.
I remember that one. Your old man cleared up that Chiquita Badana paternity suit for us back in '41, too.
So what was it, 41 or 2?
I don't remember now.
I see, I said. Well, just another one of those messy Kodak moments that never made variety. And fortunately for the LaRoches, the Thorns never kept the negatives. LaRoche flashes me one of those no-tell Hollywood smiles as he punches my time card into the payroll machine recessed in his desk.
It looks like this agency has had a thorn in its side since the crucifixion.
LaRoche's little attempt at CB DeMille humor.
Speaking of CB, did you happen to catch his latest biblical extravaganza?
Extravaganza, is it? In my day, we called them parables. No, LaRoche, I don't go to the flickers much. Just radio.
They tell me television's going to replace them both.
That'll be the day, I tell them. And then I make a note in the chummy dialogue I've been promoted to a first-name basis with LaRoche. Personally, I can't say I like the promotion. And then just to prove who cuts the checks around here, LaRoche cuts me a check. I zip up my new blood transfusion to the inner lining sealed in my coat. I normally get 35 smackers in expenses, I say, my eyes on his quick-draw pen. These aren't my usual rates, but what the heck. By the looks of things, LaRoche can afford it. Plus, I add, aiming straight for the jugular, while I help myself to more of his stale peanuts, 25% of the 5 million clams you stand to inherit as Masseuse's sole beneficiary, provided you can prove that someone murdered your prize Frenchie. It gets so quiet you can almost hear a peanut drop. And just for laughs, I toss one on LaRoche's orange sherbet-colored carpet. The little peanut sounds exactly like a gold nugget when it hits the deep shag. Where do you suggest I start, I ask?
You might try Carlos de Carlos, Maurice's personal trainer. Or Christine McCormick?
Who's McCormick, I ask. I thought you handled all of Masseuse's legal problems. I smell a hot lead, and so does LaRoche. So he pinches his nose like there was another bad smell in the room.
Some split-tail shyster out to make a name for herself off the warm carcass of the once great.
I thought only agents did that. I say in a cheap but well-deserved parting shot, LaRoche makes another one of those bad smell faces when I close the door. He was getting them down pat. Carlos de Carlos, Masseuse's personal trainer, lived in a one-room Airstream permanently bivouacked in a weedy cul-de-sac of brown chaparral and discarded food wrappers above Griffith Park. This grungy abode reeks of mildewed grain sacks, chicken feathers, and grungy gym socks. The view outside his cracked dinette window is smudged with grungy little chicken prints. Some trainer, I think, as I eyeball the rusty free weights splattered with chicken droppings and gathering more rust under the grungy aluminum awning.
LaRoche sent you, didn't he?
Carlos says, scratching his greasy T-shirt and hacking up a lungful of phlegm into what looks like a red checkered handkerchief. Closer observation reveals Carlos isn't wearing a T-shirt, and he doesn't own a red checkered handkerchief either. Did I fail to mention the word grungy? Yeah, LaRoche sent me, I say. How'd you know?
Let's put it this way. You're an ex-cop, ain't you? And LaRoche, he's convinced I iced the little guy just to get even for the time Masseuse stepped on my Zapata.
Carlos may be a cheap, psychotic rummy, but he's still sharp as a tack. And even his third-rate Ricardo Montalban is a little hard to decipher. Excuse me, Carlos, did you say Masseuse stepped on your shoe?
Not my Zapata, man. Zapata! Emiliano Zapata! My favorite gaming cock I raised from a little chick.
Carlos goes on like this for a couple of minutes until he slips into a poor man's version of Brando and On the Waterfront.
Zapata, man. He was a fighter. He was. Like a brother, man. I looked after him. I took care of him. He could have been
Contender?
Yeah, that's the word, contender. Then that clumsy elephant Masseuse, he dances all over my Zapata. He squashes him flat on the ground like a tortilla. A real old tortilla, man, with lots of guacamole and salsa on top.
I back off a couple of feet and pick up a loose brick from the barbecue pit. It's a standard operating procedure with guys who foam at the mouth at the drop of a stick. Okay, I say, I get the picture. Masseuse was no Fred Astaire in the dancing department. Well, let's say the little guy and you weren't close. Would that sum it up?
You might say that.
And to emphasize his feelings, Carlos wrenches off the head of the nearest chicken with his teeth. I saw a guy do that in a midway carnival once, only this time I wasn't asking for my quarterback. I dropped the brick and back away several more yards toward my wheels. A vintage 48 Studebaker. 9 more installments in this powder blue puppy is all mine, provided I don't get rear-ended and end up like Jimmy Cagney in White Heat. The way things look, I might not live long enough to make those 9 installments, but what the hell? You're nothing in L.A. if you don't have wheels. We'll be in touch, Carlos, I say, waving goodbye with my bullet-riddled fedora.
Hey, copper.
The sleazeball shouts, holding up the headless chicken by its pulsating neck.
Come back soon, man. We'll do lunch.
I have a basket of fries off Melrose at White Castle instead. Oh, what the heck. LaRoche is picking up the tab. Next stop, Christine McCormick's swanky office bungalow in Malibu. Driving down Sunset, I count the Jehovah's Witnesses lined up along the sidewalks with their eyes out for easy marks. My opinion, this town went to hell in a handbasket ever since Pat O'Brien and Amy Simple McPherson are no longer around to keep the riffraff out. I don't much care for the looks of Christine McCormick. One glance leaves little doubt in my mind why she picked her chosen profession. McCormick's built like an abused bulldog with bad posture. Jake Thorne, I say, offering this slavering slab of canine my callous paw. Private Dick.
I know who you are and what you are, Thorne. You reek of Old Spice cologne and cheap bourbon.
Well, I figure with a snozzola the size of her tyranny, she could tell me what I scraped off my gumshoe last week.
Spearmint gum and weak old kitty litter.
How does this old broad do it, I asked myself.
I'm telepathic.
Well, in that case, we should both be blushing.
I haven't blushed since the day I was caught without my bloomers in the back seat of my cousin's Buick.
My Studebaker's parked outside if you're feeling nostalgic. I'm only kidding, sweetheart, but with you being a telepathic and all, I guess you already knew that. For what it's worth, Bulldog almost smiles at that one. Maybe she's warming up to me. Wouldn't be the first time. That old Thorne charm. Okay. Maybe I'm picky. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, and maybe I'm a Taft Republican when it comes to middle-aged women in boxy three-piece suits, Dutch boy haircuts, and biceps, the envy of Johnny Weissmuller. Let's just say I know all about you, McCormick, I tell her. Maybe I'm not telepathic like you, sweetheart, but I remember a one Christine Kilpatrick, notorious animal psychic and con artist who is currently wanted in 27 states, who bears an uncanny resemblance to you. And maybe my close friend Bob Barstow down at Burbank Bunko would like to know all this. Well, this gets her attention. Now that we understand each other, Miss McCormick, do we play hardball?
I'll play the pitcher.
What did I tell you? These tough, liberated types are like so many wet mops in my hand once I start to squeeze.
What do you want, Seamus?
Answers, I tell her. First, what's your profit angle on Masseuse's death?
I'm representing a client who wishes to remain anonymous.
Well, we're not going to hide behind the sanctity of our client, are we?
I guess not. Does the name Fat Man mean anything to you, Seamus?
A.K.A. Pat Grant, sleazebag Hollywood agent, infamous flesh-peddling wheeler-dealer and arch-business rival of Lyndon LaRoche?
Yeah, I think that's the one.
I instinctively reach for my aerosol can of Black Flag, which I keep in my pocket for emergency situations. You should have stayed in the back seat of that Buick, Miss McCormick, considering the fleas you've been bedding down with these days.
I deeply resent that implication.
She says, erupting into a non-stop coughing fit behind my well-aimed cloud of DDT. I tip my fedora as I start for the door. We'll be in touch. I spend the next 11 hours outside the fat man's Brentwood Towers penthouse office, and for all the good it does me. I never get past the blonde in a bottle receptionist, though, who makes a career out of snapping gum, crossing her legs, and filing her nails. Mind you, not all at the same time. These days, they got union reps for these kind of labor infractions. I'll wait, I tell her. But when security closes the joint at 3 a.m., I'm forced to leave obscenities over his message machine. There's something chintzy about the streets of La La Land at 3 a.m. Personally, I like the Big Tangerine and wouldn't change my address for anywhere else in the 48. And that's because sooner or later, they tell us, L.A. gets into your bloodstream. And if you're dumb enough to walk around the streets of L.A. at 3 a.m., sooner or later, your bloodstream's going to run into the streets. How else could I explain that stiletto sticking out of my shoulder blade? Well, don't sweat the small stuff, Thorne. And sooner or later, it all comes down to the small stuff. So, with a little luck and a lot of patience, I managed to pry out this 7-inch Italian letter opener with the help of a 33 Hudson hood ornament. I improvised into a church key just before passing out. Miss Arlene Latouche, reformed door-to-door Girl Scout cookie salesperson, now current owner of the Hudson, drives me to her rented Pasadena townhouse after rifling through my wallet and discovering no Blue Cross.
You were lucky this time, Jake.
Arlene seductively informs me across the pink bubbles of her Olympic-sized bathtub.
That Sicilian swordfish missed your heart by inches.
Missed my heart by inches. Reminds me of this suicide blonde I once knew down in Oceanside. We're old friends, Arlene and me. We go back weeks. A lifetime in the city of fallen angels.
Feeling better, Jake?
Arlene asked after a little Parisian mouth-to-mouth for the circulation. Yeah, much better, I tell her. You can turn off the bubble machine now, Toots. I'm beginning to feel like Lawrence Welkin here.
What bubble machine, Jake?
Knowing Arlene, I don't want to pursue this personal line of information too closely.
You lost a lot of blood last night, Jake.
Occupational hazard, Arlene. I bound from the tub and reached for my fedora. I'm afraid this jacket's history.
You're right about that, Jake. Those white stripes went out of vogue with barbershop quartets. You want to tell me about this one?
Well, I bought it at Salvation Army where I get all my suits.
Not the jacket, smarty pants. The case you're working on.
Arlene pensively bites her lower lip in a way that makes me want to bite the other one. And then she passes me a bottle of cheap bourbon with my name scratched on it. I'm on a case, dollface, I tell her, shooting back the Kentucky mouthwash. Don't crowd me.
You know me, Jake. I don't crowd. But I'm here if you need me.
Oh, what time is it?
6 a.m. Why?
It's time to wrap this one up, sweetheart. Never mind the needle and thread for the jacket. Where's your phone? Arlene pitches me her phone. It had a very long cord. My reflexes being what they are, I batted out of the park and into her bathtub. Sorry about that, Arlene. I guess I'll buy you another one. Or would you rather have my old Philco?
It's the second half of the 20th century, for crying out loud. Jake, and here you are still listening to that old Philco. When are you going to get a transistor radio like everybody else in this town?
It's on my list, sweetheart. It's on my list. Right after I get some bullets for my gun.
Use the extension in my boudoir.
She purrs, no grudges about the broken Amici. Arlene and me, we've grown close over the past 3 weeks. And it wasn't because our blood test came back negative. She was right about me being behind the times, too. I hadn't voted in an election since Wendell Willkie. After a few well-placed phone calls, all my prime suspects are assembled in Miss Latouche's antique Art Deco living room. She'll have to fumigate the place after this barbershop quartet. Lyndon LaRoche, Carlos DeCarlos, Christine McCormick, and even the elusive Pat the Fat Man Grant has decided to join our little bridge party. The truth is, if a paraplegic grandmother were drowning in Arlene's bathtub, I doubt that any of these humanitarians would toss the old bird so much as a cherry lifesaver. But if that same waterlogged old biddy happened to be a Rockefeller or a Carnegie, you can bet your last wooden nickel they would all be down on their knees, sucking up those greasy bubbles like it was a 12-ounce Pepsi. Well, that's life. That's what people say. Riding high in April, shot down in May, the chairman of the board used to say. Or as my old philosophy teacher of hard knocks once said, it's the bottom of the scorecard in this big existential bowling tournament called life. A bunch of shinola, you ask me. For my money, that old philosophy teacher of mine should have listened to more Sinatra.
I say, Mr. Thorne, what are we doing here at this ungodly hour?
With all his English blubber decked out in Hong Kong silk, portly Pat Grant impressed me. And for an agent, this one could be tough. Legend had it the fat man once nullified Doris Day's contract on a morals clause. Imagine if you can stomach the thought of blood-sucking politician inseminating a parasitic used car salesman and then carrying this malodorous fetus inside the festering womb of an unscrupulous stockbroker. Well, that's Pat the Fat Man Grant, Tinseltown incarnate.
I'll say it again, Seamus. What's the purpose of this soiree?
He asked, fidgeting with his Schweppes and mineral water. Grant doesn't drink booze as a rule, and all things considered, I don't trust any Grant that does. Relax, fat man. Grant Enterprises won't collapse under the enormous weight of your absence. Enjoy the courtesy crackers and cheese whiz your well-endowed hostess has provided. We all know why we're here, or do I have to spell it out for you? Someone in this room permanently silenced masseuse, and you all had your motives. Every one of you would have benefited from his untimely demise, and I'm here to prove it.
That's a lie.
Christine McCormick explodes under the strain.
And I'm not speaking another word until I consult a lawyer.
Bimbo, you are a lawyer. And with all due respect to masseuse, Thorne, I think this three-ring circus has gone on long enough. Now get on with it.
And since you're so impatient to begin, LaRoche, I'll start with you.
Me? I'm the guy who hired you, remember?
Well, you don't think I'm dumb enough to fall for that old gag, do you? I ask as I start to pace the yellow linoleum. Personally, I always found pacing the yellow linoleum my favorite part about being a private detective, which works out just fine considering all the legwork Guy Foley and I do in this crummy business.
Damn it, Thorne. Get on with it, man.
Carlos demanded. Well, considering the greasy old wheezebag's condition, I couldn't blame him for his impatience. If that's the way you all feel about it, I'll give you Masseuse's murder in a nutshell. And thinking about it, I bet that's the way he'd want it. I'll start with you, Carlos, if you promise not to croak.
Wait a minute. You said you were going to start with me.
I spin around quickly, index finger pointing like the barrel of a throwdown .38. Testy today, are we, LaRoche? You thought that by hiring me to track down Masseuse's killer, you'd throw suspicion off yourself. Well, what you didn't know was I knew you needed Masseuse's $5 million just to stay solvent, because LaRoche Enterprises is being gobbled up by its arch competitor, Pat Grant, sitting over there on the sofa, hogging up the cheese whiz.
That's a lie.
Careful, fat man, you're spraying cracker crumbs all over my bimbo's carpet.
And you're off the case, Thorne. Fired. You can't pin this donkey's tail on me, you ass. Besides, it was written up in all the papers. Everyone knows Masseuse died of natural causes.
That's right, LaRoche. The official cause of death was respiratory failure, a condition deliberately administered vis-a-vis a contaminated blood transfusion by his vengeance-crazed personal trainer, Carlos de Carlos.
What you say, man? I love Masseuse like a brother. You can't frame me.
Only guess who got caught a little careless with Masseuse's blood transfusion?
I don't know what you're talking about, man. I got a little chest cold.
Carlos reaches for one of Arlene's crochet doilies to cover his spickle-flecked mouth. Go on, Carlos, cough it up. Confession's good for the soul. Isn't that right, Carlos?
No, man, I swear.
Spit it out, Carlos. The truth is you were jealous of Masseuse from the start. Jealous of his fame and his wealth and his talent and the limelight you felt was yours. And who knows? Maybe in some small way it was. Well, that's because in your own twisted mind, Masseuse was an ungrateful clod, and maybe in some small way he was. Just like all the others who maybe,
In no
Small way.
stomped their Buster Browns to the top. As for that cock and bull story you admitted about Masseuse stepping on your favorite pet rooster, it didn't take an overpaid Viennese head shrinker to figure out you were projecting your own trampled ego.
I said you were fired, Thorne. Why don't you keep that check for $250 plus another $50 for your troubles, and we'll call it square.
What was that you said, LaRoche? Fired? Well, that's just fine, LaRoche, because I'm working for the DA now. And remember yesterday morning when you said your father made some wise investments for Masseuse? Well, I did some fact-checking, and it turns out your old man didn't make any investments for Masseuse. The facts are, through the years, your father swindled Masseuse out of his entire estate, and the only murder would cover those tracks. Your plan almost worked, LaRoche, until I realized what you did was just one more smokescreen to throw me off the scent.
Which was?
Peanut butter.
Excuse me, Jake?
Arlene asked, scratching the roots of her peroxided head.
Like, maybe I didn't go to trade school like the rest of you geniuses, but I think, like, maybe, did I miss an important clue here?
I said peanut butter, dollface. 2 months before his death, Masseuse and his new agent secretly signed a $10 million contract to be the exclusive spokesman for Nutty Buddy Peanut Butter, proud makers of Nutty Buddy Peanut Butter Spread and Nutty Buddy Peanut Butter Flavored Nougats. And who was this mysterious new agent, you ask? None other than the entrepreneurial Pat Grant stuffing his corpulent cheeks with cheese cubes like this is 1953, and there's no such thing as bad cholesterol. And just then, Super Scum springs up and on general principle mutters something incoherent, denying everything.
You'll never prove anything.
Shut up, will you? Look at my new Iranian carpet, for crying out loud. Between you and that disgusting bag of spit over there contaminating my doilies, it's a wonder I don't get convicted.
I'll pay for the carpet.
To hell with my carpet, blubber buttocks. I know a genuine pig when I see one.
Do you also know a genuine blackmailer?
What do you mean, Jake?
Well, just this, sweetheart. It's a well-kept Hollywood secret. Masseuse had an illicit love affair with Mumbo, son of Jumbo, and news of Masseuse's affair would have destroyed Mumbo's lucratively manufactured image. So when the porcine Pat Grant caught wind of all this, he started milking Mumbo for millions.
Mumbo, that beefsteak Samoan actor who plays the cute little dancing elephant in the pink tutu, is gay?
Then Arlene gasped.
Jake, that's incredible.
Not half as incredible as the little scheme Pat Grant concocted. But you see, despite all his blackmailing attempts and double dealings, Grant Enterprises is a financial bust. All except for that little-known $20 million insurance policy the fat man took out on Masseuse when they signed the contract. Next to $20 million, that pissant $10 million nutty buddy account was peanuts. Right, McCormick?
Why ask me? I don't know what you're talking about.
The bloodhound-faced former animal psychic insisted. I was curious to see how her telepathic powers would get her out of this curbside patty cake. Well, we both know the feds have been on your tail for years, I tell her. You thought you had a pretty good thing going, didn't you, McCormick? And that's when I started putting two and two together, only with the twos I had, I didn't come up with any Noah's Ark. I knew that phony dime store photograph on your desk was a dingus the minute I laid eyes on it. Anything to take me off the tracks of your longtime partner in crime and Playboy Latin lover, Carlos de Carlos, who really isn't dying at all, are you, Carlos?
Here we go again.
Arlene petulantly sighs. And that's quite a trick for Arlene, considering she can't spell petulantly. But I won't hold that against her, and neither should you. Confused, sweetheart? I'll explain. Carlos's angle would have blown McCormick's former partner, Pat the Fat Man Grant's petty blackmailing scheme higher than his tax bracket. So McCormick double-crossed Grant and figured out this hot little plot to bilk this town of millions.
Honestly, Thorne, just how do you propose I do a thing like that?
By milking the schmut and sensationalism and tell-all books that would inevitably follow. Add to that the $50 million palimony suit you intended to slap on the posthumous Masseuse estate.
That's a lie, and you know it. Maybe when I was younger, I did a couple of things I'm not too proud of, but I was working my way through law school. And I always drew the line with dirty little mimes.
Well, that didn't stop you from living with a couple of them through the years. Those 5 years down in Ensenada, you were hiding out from the feds. And that's where you met Carlos, your gigolo boyfriend. Isn't that right, McCormick?
Don't tell him nothing, man. Can't you see he's bluffing?
Shut up, you cheap Tijuana pimp. I can take care of myself. We wouldn't be in this fix right now if you hadn't insisted on taking those cheap photographs of the three of us.
Consider yourself lucky, Carlos. McCormick had it rigged from the start for you to take the fall for Masseuse's murder while she sat back and prepared to make billions, dragging Masseuse's good name through the mud on those new talk shows we all see on TV. Isn't that right, McCormick?
Yes, it's true. I saw my big chance, and I took it.
Your only mistake was the stale tuna on your breath yesterday afternoon in your office. I smelled that same day-old tuna on the back of my neck seconds before I was stabbed in the back on my way out of Pat Grant's office early this morning.
You'll never live to prove that in a court of law, Seamus.
This disharmonious quartet sings as one while they pull out 4 gats. Not cats, Foley, gats. 4 gats, 5 counting Guy Foley, all pointed at my various vital organs. And then, as fate would have it, a convenient bolt of lightning knocks out the electrical power down the street, plunging Arlene's townhouse into pitch blackness, an instant before those 4 previously concealed handguns blaze away. When the lights come back on 10 seconds later, my 4 prime suspects are sprawled dead on Arlene's abused shag carpet. Make that 4 prime suspects and 1 very annoying Foley artist permanently hard of hearing. Happens like that in a town where you're often struck for a plausible or even an ironical, implausible deus ex machina.
A what?
A happy Hollywood ending, sweetheart.
Well, why didn't you say that in the first place, Jake? And who's going to pay for all this? If my landlady sees this mess, she'll break my lease.
Relax, will you? Tell your landlady an unidentified, dope-crazed occult broke in here and formed a suicide pact while you were out slurping a couple of Italian ices at Swab's.
But,
Arlene glances around the smoke-filled, blood-soaked, gore-splattered, death-clogged, not altogether color-coordinated apartment. I admit the new decorating scheme was getting a little busy.
Aren't we even going to call the police or anything, Jake?
What for? They wouldn't believe our story any more than if we told them Joan Crawford was once a nun.
But I don't get it, Jake. Who killed that little mime anyway?
That's a very disturbing and deeply convoluted philosophical question, Arlene, and one that borders both on film noir and early 20th century existentialism. So let me attempt to answer your question with a pit metaphor I scribbled down with a Grumbacher.
You wrote the answer down with a cookie?
Not a Grumbacher cookie, one of those sharpened Grumbacher art pencils.
Never mind that, Jake. Who killed Maurice Masseuse?
Well, in one sense, you might say Hollywood killed Maurice Masseuse.
How's that?
By turning our dreams against us and turning us against ourselves in the end.
Gosh, that is existential, Jake. Something right up there with Janae, or maybe even an old Charles Boyer movie.
Maybe, dollface, but don't you think it's time we cleaned up this mess and turned on the radio instead? Arlene started for the broom and the dustpan, and then Arlene turned to me with another bright idea in the vacuum tube of hers while I updated my portfolio.
Jake, ain't you heard? Radio's dead. Everyone who's anyone these days watches television.
Television? Where's the nostalgia in that, dollface?
Oh, you're so old-fashioned, Jake. I think we should try it just this once, don't you? Who knows? Maybe you'll even get to like it.
Something in the way Arlene said like it let me know what was good for me. Sure, Toots, I said. I'll try it. Just this once.
Get a load of this, Jake. Jake, where you going now? We was just getting comfortable. Where you going?
Back to radio where I belong.
Tonight, show him how much lovelier your hair can look after a Luster Cream shampoo. Only Luster Cream brings you Kay Duma's magic formula blend of secret ingredients plus gentle lanolin. Gives loveliness to lather even in hardest water. Glamorizes your hair even as you wash it. Luster Cream, not a soap, not a liquid, but a dainty cream shampoo. Take it from actress Deborah Carr. Luster Cream leaves hair fragrantly clean, free of loose dandruff, glistening with sheen, soft, manageable. Gives new beauty to all hairdos or permanents. A 4-ounce jar is just $1. Smaller sizes come in either tubes or jars. So tonight, try Luster Cream and...
Beautiful Luster Cream girl, You owe your crowning glory to Luster Cream Shampoo.
Next time you're found with your chin on the ground, there's a lot to be learned. So look around.
Just what made that little old ant think he'd move that rubber tree plant? Everyone knows an ant can't move a rubber tree plant, but he had high hopes. He's got high hopes. He's got high apple pie in the sky. So anytime you're getting low, instead of letting go, just remember that ant. Whoops, there goes another rubber tree plant.
Oops, there goes another rubber tree.
Whoops, there goes another rubber tree plant.
And troubles call and you're back to the wall. There's a lot to be learned. That wall could fall.
Once there was a silly old ram, thought he'd punch a hole in the dam. No one could make that ram scram. He kept punching that dam 'cause he had high hopes. He had high hopes. He had high apple pie in the sky. So anytime you're feeling bad, instead of getting sad, just remember that ram. Oops, there goes a billion kilowatt dam.
Oops, there goes a billion kilowatt.
Oops, there goes a billion kilowatt dam.
Problem's just a toy balloon. They'll be bursting soon. They're just bound to go pop.
Oops, there goes another problem kerplop.
There goes another problem curve.
Oops, there goes another problem kerplop. Kerplop.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for joining us for this brief performance of the Great Southwest Radio Theater Project. I don't think it was brief, I meant benefit. And now, the GSR cast and crew in alphabetical order. From Coolidge, Arizona, Bill Alewyn. Also from Coolidge, Gene Carter. From Casa Grande, Kent Ferguson. From Coolidge, our Foley sound technician, Rod Gibson. From Casa Grande, Hayden Herbert. Also from Casa Grande, Jeannie Calder. From Tempe, Matt Madonna. And from Florence, Andy McAvoy. Faith McAvoy. And Josh McAvoy. From Coolidge, Danica Miller. From Coolidge, Keith Seaman. From Coolidge, Isabella Swain. From Coolidge, Maggie Swain. From Eloy, Janie Toth. From Casa Grande, Jenny Lee Voice. From Casa Grande, Kevin West. And And also from Casa Grande, Kay Wyman. And I'm your announcer and director for this performance, Ralph Swain. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for tuning in. See you on the radio.